Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We're back here with episode number 14 of the vlog. An apology for not posting a technique video for 2 weeks in a row now. That is the first spell of not having a video out this year. My time management skills with the impeding hurricane in our area and traveling down for the Key West race, I realized driving down, I'm like, oh, I didn't do a video earlier in the week and I've already left the house for the weekend, so I'm unable to post out content. But don't worry, this week we will definitely have a technique video. I'm already working on it. With Hurricane Helene here in the Central Florida area, my personal home was unaffected by the wind, rain, and rising tides. I'm actually pretty far away from tidal influenced water in general, so the storm surge that affected most of Florida was not a prevalent issue for me personally. Many of my friends and even my mother in Tampa had various levels of flooding, so our hearts here at K2N go out to everybody dealing with the fallout from the hurricane. And that has now extended into the southeast US, so there's flash flooding in North Carolina and Tennessee, and so it's affecting a tremendous portion of our paddling community here in this region of the US. As the storm was developing early on Thursday, we were planning to go to the Key West race, and it seemed like the race was going to go ahead on Saturday, so we decided to drive kind of around the hurricane as it was making its way up the coast of Florida. We were able to make it to Key West with minimal issues. It was a little scary on 7 Mile Bridge with 40-mile-an-hour constant crosswind. With the help of secure straps, some zip ties, and maybe a little duct tape, white knuckling it across the bridge, we were able to make it there safely. As the hurricane was passing the south part of Florida, it began to gain more and more strength as it moved further and further away from us, so we personally were very safe on the island for the most part. With the race recap, I want to highlight some of the very positive things with us here in K2N in Hernando, some of the athletes that went down and their success stories, pivoting into me falling short of my personal expectations, and then some of the positive that can be garnered from my negative experience. So I have done Key West a number of times. There are a few of these medals up here that are Key West related, and there are a lot of times going around the island where it's like a pond, or the wind-driven swells are reminiscent of a flatter body of water. There's not a huge ground swell that is influenced in Key West, right? You don't see people going down the pipeline and surfing in Key West because most of the waves are between 2 inches and 6 inches on a given day. So with the hurricane, it was relatively far away, but it is enough to churn up the ocean, but not in a traditional groundswell way where you have these long, beautiful wave sets that are 8 to 10 to 12 seconds apart from each other, right? And very graceful. These are wind-driven swells. So we were contending with a larger wave set that was coming between 3 and 5 seconds, pummeling all the vessels. On the morning of the event, there was still a big south wind, which was pushing the swells in the direction that they've been pushed from on the Thursday, the Friday, and then ultimately the Saturday. There was never a good time for the swells to actually die down. The race course itself was abnormally choppy in a not advantageous way, right? If you ride these swells, you're gonna run into the beach immediately, right? So all of this is a crosswind, and it is slightly in our face with the swells as we are circumnavigating Key West. Had we done the course backwards, these swells would have been likely slightly behind us, but not in a good surfable way, but just in a much less annoying context of the swells hitting the nose and the front end of your vessel every 3 to 5 seconds. So the major highlights here in Hernando, we are on a lake, right? We are on a flat body of water, so it's hard to articulate and get adequate ocean time because of our geographical location, right? It's always been a major hurdle within the club. So we have a lot of paddlers that have almost no background in this, right? And part of the hurdle is it's an unknown, right? Your body doesn't know how to react to something that it's never done before. When you've done it, you can relax and it makes it much easier. But when it's new, your body immediately tightens up and it tries to fight some of these elements, which makes it very difficult. This is a major theme that we talk about here on the channel in various contexts, right? If you can relax, life is much easier. But when you have the ocean that is literally trying to chew you up and spit you out, it's very hard to stay relaxed. So most of these paddlers have not dealt with this in any context. And this is not a flat day. 3-foot swells are not that large by themselves, but coming at these very quick and intensive intervals, it can become overwhelming very fast. So that's the major highlight. My wife was able to go around the island, not in record speed, but being able to complete it, and in her own words, without crying. All of the footage that we're gonna have at the end of the Key West Classic is going to be of her. We were able to put the GoPro safely on her outrigger canoe, and it was not a great idea to put it on my prone board, which I'll go over to soon. But many of our other club members have not been around Key West and have very limited ocean access, and all of them were able to survive the rounding, and each of them were also able to place in the top 3. So it was very cool to see people go out of their comfort zone and to kind of believe in the system and all the practice that we've put into the sport and put it into action. We can't recreate conditions that are like this, but we can try to train people to stay calm, stay relaxed, and use the skills that we try to hone every single day to lead them to a positive outcome. So again, very cool. I didn't get my own, but my wife got it, so I guess it's mine. So we got one of these 2024 first places. And I don't think I've ever gotten a first place around Key West. I've always fallen a little bit short. So pivoting into my negative experience, right? I don't have many events where I do not finish, but unfortunately at this Key West, I have a DNF next to my name. I'm actually not on the results at all. So on the prone board, it's an interesting dynamic because again, I haven't had the opportunity to go into the ocean as extensively as I have wanted to, and on a normal Key West, it's almost like paddling on a lake. So I wasn't anticipating these very ferocious, high-intensity swells that would be coming in on the board. And the element that I underestimated was not balance or speed or skill, but it was my susceptibility to seasickness. Getting onto the course, there are stand-up paddlers that are falling relentlessly. People are having a very hard time dealing with these swells. And going to the start line, I was like, man, prone board is awesome. We're so low to the water. I have 2 hands I can use to propel myself to keep the glide going. I have a rudder to steer the vessel while a lot of people are getting beat up by the chop. Before the seasickness set in, it's exhilarating. It was one of the coolest events I've ever done because of all the training to make prone paddling so much less miserable. Everybody that sees prone paddleboarding, oh man, my shoulders couldn't take that. I couldn't be on my knees for that long. And out on the race course, I wasn't thinking about any of my muscles at all because I had gotten to the point where they don't immediately get fatigued anymore. You can go miles and miles and miles in these kind of awkward, low leverage situations. And the first half mile of my race, again, very exhilarating, right? Seeing the swell, seeing people struggle, jumping to the front, being in the top 3 with some other prone paddle boarders, and seeing sea kayaks that are out there behind us. It was very cool. Swells were one aspect of coming up and down that kind of triggered the seasickness. But the other element that I attribute it to is the swells coming towards the nose, hitting it, and water rushing into my mouth. So my mouth is open because I'm, prone paddle, I'm tired, I'm trying to mouth breathe a little bit, and this water just keeps dumping and dumping into my mouth. And I get to the point where I'm like, man, this is a really gross flavor in my head here. And then I hit a swell and I drop down, my stomach drops, and I realize, oh no, I don't feel good. And I'm only 0.6 miles into this. Then the next rationale is, okay, it's not that bad right now. It's only another mile and we get onto the inside and it's going to be much flatter throughout the rest of the course, right? So I can regroup there, not a big deal. So I drop down some of my exertion a little bit, just trying to survive this feeling that I have with my equilibrium. But things progress pretty quickly with that, right? I started dry heaving and then I literally started puking all over the vessel, getting really dizzy, energy levels are starting to drop, and I'm not quite out of the ocean yet, right? So this now becomes a fight trying to get around and away from these swells to somewhere a little bit more protected. I'm able to pull over by the Air Force Base, right? There's a little beach there, and I get out and I stand on land. I'm like, yeah, I'm starting to feel better, right? I'm getting my equilibrium back, the hard part's over, and once I get back on the board, it just slowly creeped in again, and it's the same exact progression of feeling a little dizzy, dry heaving, and then actually puking. So from that point, I make it past Mallory Square, and I have to make this decision of, do I continue? Do I keep taking breaks? I know that most of these racers are gonna take 4 or 5 hours to complete it, so I can kind of limp my way around to get around the island. But the major concern was regrouping on the inside, but building up a lot more fatigue, right? 6 or 7 miles into the event is gonna be a lot different than the first mile or two. As we go back into the ocean, I know the ocean swells are going to be even more vicious as we approach the finish line. The angle of the island and the angle of the swells are going to make them that much more difficult to contend with. So adding in a layer of fatigue, being seasick for the 4th or 5th or 6th time means that it's going to come on quicker and potentially even more hardcore. I didn't think there was any good takeout spots, right? So now it's a safety risk. If I'm out there, there's not a safety boat that's nearby me enough to rescue me if I start panicking or freaking out or just completely run out of energy. The swell's now pushing me into a rock jetty or some sort of a seawall, and I am physically unable to command the vessel because of the seasickness, and it was a major concern. So now the decision is, can I get out here right now safely and call it a day, or do I roll the dice and potentially kill myself trying to finish this race? And as I've done more races and as I've gotten a little older and more wise, as they say, I will assess the risk of some of these events, right? And pull the plug if I need to. It doesn't happen often, but a younger version of myself would have went all in trying to finish that race course. But looking at the risk assessment, it's not worth it, right? So my personal safety is much more important to me and my family than, you know, finishing in X amount of minutes around Key West. Like, the only people that really care probably don't even care that much, right? So it's more important to stay alive than it is to risk dying for a placing. So I was able to pull into the waterfront marina, got out on the dock there, stood on land, immediately started feeling better, but I knew, again, if I went out on the water, it could quickly devolve outside of my control. And that's the DNF, right? And so after that, I did a little race report on my personal Facebook, just like this, where I highlight our racers here in Hernando, their ability to go out there and survive a very treacherous course. In the end, I have a synopsis, and within that, the phrasing was that I failed. I went out there to accomplish a goal and I failed to do it. So I post that publicly, and as I'm walking down Duval Street, I had somebody that had read that who stopped me on the street and said, "Robert, don't think of it as a failure. Like, you didn't fail, you are not a failure." And they were offended that I would use that word in conjunction with myself. And I can understand, right? Getting to the race course was a success. Going on the race course was a success. Surviving the section of the ocean was a success. And there are things that are outside of your power sometimes where you can't control them, right? I'm not that offended or upset that I didn't complete the course because it's something that I didn't account for. I didn't take motion sickness medicine, which would have potentially have been the easy remedy, and it gets outside of my control. My training and fitness and ability to complete it was not really the question. It's just my ability to deal with these swells with my equilibrium has come into question, and I'm okay with that being the reason that I'm unable to meet my own expectations. But it was a very positive conversation about focusing on the good as opposed to focusing on the failure. So the phrasing for it, which is the title of the video, is dealing with adversity. Whenever we try to do something challenging or something that is meaningful, it's gonna be adverse in nature. And there are times when we clear this hurdle, and there are times where we don't clear this hurdle. And it's okay to not reach your expectations. One of the things that gives me relatability is I have fallen short of my personal expectations when it comes to racing paddling craft over and over and over again. I am not a prodigy. I am not somebody that automatically wins in everything that I do, right? All of it is built on hills and hills of falling short of expectation and using that as a positive to keep pushing forward. I wasn't born good at paddling, right? You could make the argument, I'm still not good at paddling, but I tried. And I think that's the biggest distinction. It's one of the things that makes me most relatable to people. When they're going through their journey, I have been in that exact situation for myself. And I remember what it was like. And I like to be there to help people progress through that so they can be just as successful or more so than I have been. If it was easy, it wouldn't mean anything to go out there and do it. And that is a showcase more so than just my personal paddling progress and journey, right? Looking at K2N in Hernando. What is Hernando? Do you guys even know where that is or what our population is here in Citrus County? On paper, if you were to hear me say that 6 or 7 years ago, you would immediately say you're going to fall short of your expectations. There's no way you can start a large paddling club in the middle of nowhere. Now everybody asks, how did I do it? And it was as simple as knowing that there's a chance that I don't reach it, but it's worth pursuing because if I do, I can do something meaningful with it. This YouTube channel is another great example. Oh, Robert, there's already a bunch of YouTube channels that put out great content and they already have X amount of subscribers, and there's no way that you're gonna be able to get to that point. You're gonna fall short of your expectations. But I'm not scared of that, right? It's not something that holds me back. And this YouTube channel, the online paddle school, the club that we have here day to day, all of these are manifestations of the positivity that comes from pursuing these adverse things, being scared of the potential of failing and not reaching these expectations, right? And you never want that to be a barrier that holds you back. If you think that you can do it, it is the most important first step to doing it, right? And the attempt at trying to get there is more important than the outcome in a lot of situations. So that's my positive pep talk. So we're gonna transition into the footage of my wife going around the island, right? I haven't actually watched the footage at this point, so I'm gonna edit some good parts. I'm gonna make her look like she's really struggling. I'm gonna give some commentary. I'm using that as a highlight just to show how tough these conditions are for everybody that did attempt this. We'll see you all next week for episode 15 of the K2N vlog. So I filmed the footage that you just watched on Monday, and I dropped off the prone board down at the lake, and Tuesday morning we had a tree branch from a giant oak tree fall on one of our dragon boats, and unfortunately behind this dragon boat is the prone paddleboard that I used at Key West. So it's kind of a shame to bring it back from Key West, hauling it through a literal hurricane to safely put it at the park for something to fall on it. So this is something from Hurricane Helene. Just the wind and rainwater was enough. This tree it looks like it's rotted on the inside, so it's probably time for this thing to get cut down. But yeah, it fell, split the prone paddleboard in half. So when I did the first interview part, the prone was not destroyed until the next day. And unfortunately split it in half. It's now a modular prone paddleboard, so you can haul it in the back of your vehicle in 2 pieces. So I am planning on fixing this. That dragon boat was donated to our club and was previously damaged, and this prone board I am into for a small amount of money, so not a big deal, just a future project, taping that back together, maybe a future vlog episode. So here we are, Christina Norman out on the Key West race course. She is preparing to go to the start line. I don't mention in the interview that the boards and sea kayaks get a half-hour head start, and then the sit-down craft go in a second wave. So I'm already out there puking somewhere, and she's just getting started and getting to the race course. So this is right in the launch, right at the lagoon here, and you can see this is normally super flat, and there are sizable waves coming in. One of the main things with this, as she makes her way to the start line, is the intervals in which these are occurring, right? It looks like they're reverberating off of a seawall, they're coming back so quick. So there's not really a lot of time to catch your breath between these swells, so if you're not used to it, it can really pummel you to death. That hurricane in the back is paddled by Matt, who has paddled in Hawaii, and that is my hurricane. He actually rented it from us here at K2N. Very cool to see him travel far and wide to come out and enjoy some Florida paddling. So the 2 of them coming towards the start line. The Key West start line is notorious for not being a real start line. They just kind of start the race exactly at 8 o'clock in this case. So whether you're on the start line or not, that horn is gonna blow and the race is gonna start. So this is on the race course here. You can see the water, pretty turbulent, coming in from the side, slightly at the nose, right? So it's not totally coming in east to west here, or south in this case, but from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, it's coming in, you know, just slightly in the front. So you can see the swells here from the nose. It's great with the GoPro when you can actually see swells, because usually they flatten them out, but some of these sets are a little over 3 foot, it felt like. when you're on the prone board and you got your chin by the water, they feel like they're like 7 feet tall. But you can see the violence that the swells with this wind-driven storm are producing, right? The vessel is constantly being knocked up and down, and it's pretty hard to navigate. So the footage for this race is relatively short because there's so much water on the lens. So this is coming around out of the ocean. So you have the swells that are now on your back, but you have the current that is under you that is slowing you down. So it's actually really tough to catch these swells here. Christina is able to get a little fortitude and take some power strokes and catch at least one swell, even for a moment. But this is coming out of the ocean section. You can see there's still water on the lens. This happens, you know, when there's a lot of swell and chop. And Christina requested that there was footage of her paddling in the flat water side because she said, quote unquote, I want to look good. And she didn't think her ocean paddling was too savvy. As we're watching it here, she made it look pretty simple though, getting beat up by the chop. Going under the bridge here, so this is a little less than halfway around the island. So half the course is on this intercoastal type part. It's an island, but it's wind protected in this case. So her paddling through, this is the point where it's easy to regroup. The GoPro died before the second ocean section, so you just have to leave it to your imagination on how difficult and how choppy that section ended up being. Thank you all so much for checking out the footage this week. If you have had a race that was incredibly difficult and had suffered a DNF or just had a really bad time, leave a comment down below and we'll check it out. Thank you all for watching. See you next week.